My name is Teri Loretto, and I'm a full-time faculty member at Algonquin College. But in a previous life, I was a gig culture worker, and I came to motherhood much later in life. I was 42 when I had my now 10-and-a-half-year-old.
My name is Keta. I'm a mother of two, and I live in the United Kingdom. I gave birth to my first daughter in Nigeria and my second daughter in the United States.
My name is Justine Stewart. I am a small business owner and a writing student at Algonquin here in Ottawa. And I'm also a first-time mom. I have a 3-year-old daughter.
I'm Susan Wheat. I am a lactation consultant for 11 years and a La Leche League leader. La Leche League is a peer support group for parents who are breastfeeding their babies. And I've been a La Leche League leader for 37 years. It was challenges breastfeeding my own child that brought me to La Leche League for help. And then I accredited as a leader there. So it's been a long journey of helping parents. I've also been a postpartum and a birth doula. And so working with parents and babies and young children is what makes me happiest.
I remember it being the most beautiful moment of my life. They left me in a quiet room. I wasn't in pain for the first time in 3 days. I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. I was just talking to the baby, Sorry, I'm going to get a little emotional because I said, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I want you to be safe in my belly. I don't want you to come out into this crazy world. So I could hear the heartbeat, and that's all I could hear in this quiet room. And it was the most beautiful moment of my life. And then you give birth and you're like, oh my God, there's screaming, there's yelling.
When I had my first daughter, I had depression. And so I had to go on vacation without her to take care of myself so as not to endanger her. I had a very difficult time during pregnancy. And I was so glad to be by myself and recover.
I did wind up having an emergency C-section because at a certain point, she went into distress. And it was a lot of highs and lows, and it was really, really hard on me emotionally. It was really hard on my partner to watch me be in so much pain.
It's all about support and the right information. And, 40 years ago when I became a mother, I was so confused because this book said that, and this person said something else, and that person said something else yet again. And so, unfortunately, that is still happening today, only it's far worse because we have the internet. And the conflicting information can make us just not know where to turn. And so that definitely is a far greater challenge these days than it used to be.
Breastfeeding was something I felt was very important, partially through some of the research I'd done, getting the early milk in as vaccination methodology, and also that the proximity to the child and the closeness that it brought you. But I was very ill prepared for having a difficult time with it.
I wasn't prepared at all for the breastfeeding experience, even though I had heard how awful it was. And occasionally I had seen some ladies cry while breastfeeding. I actually was looking forward to it, but I was disappointed to learn that I wouldn't experience that emotion. The connection was also another factor. My mother-in-law claimed that because my children did not latch onto their mother's breast, there would be no attachment between me and them. Although it was later revealed to be false, there were also that anxiety. All of these things were simply myths that our forefathers believed in, and they were very untrue.
I do think that breastfeeding is, a very positive and healthy thing to do if you can do it.
We encourage people to get prepared ahead of time. Most people take a prenatal course before they have their baby, before the birth, but many people don't think about taking a prenatal breastfeeding class. And so that is something that's available, especially here in Ottawa and probably elsewhere as well. Educating ourselves before the baby comes about what's typical is so important.
I had a great pregnancy with no real scares. I had no morning sickness. Sorry, moms. I had no morning sickness. And as a 42-year-old, I thought, I've lived a life. I've got this. I'm not a teenager. You know, I'm cool. But then when you go into labor and the hospital has told you do not come in because it could be Braxton Hicks, you better be in labor. So you're already, I don't want to impose upon anybody. So I was in labor for 3 days before I went to see my doctor. When they said push, I pushed and I tore quite badly. So I ended up with an episiotomy with a lot of stitches. I said, I'm having a hard time with the baby. I can't seem to get it to latch and breastfeed. And I had an inverted nipple on one side before I breastfed, so that made it even harder. And this person, I don't even know if they were a doctor, pushed me into the hard chair and said, well, just sit down and take your baby. And I had stitches. And I just burst into tears because it was the most, including the birth, was not as painful as the episiotomy. I couldn't stand in a shower, the hot water, it felt like knives going into your nether regions anytime I would move or sit, because I think I had 12 to 15 stitches down there. And, it's painful. And literally put his hands on my shoulders and pushed me into a hard chair. And I just was like, and then handed me this human being that I just met, not met, but you know what I mean? And it was so painful that every time I sat, I couldn't breastfeed sitting. So I had to lie on my side to breastfeed or stand, which is really awkward. So yeah, you feel as a mom that you're doing something wrong. You feel like I should know how to do this. This should just come naturally.
Both of my deliveries were not vaginal, but they went smoothly. And despite the fact that the first birthplace took in Nigeria, where the doctors were skilled and the recuperation process was more simpler for the first birth than it was for the second, I received painkillers. I was urged to heal naturally in the United States when I had my second child, and that was really very painful. The stitching process varied between Nigeria and the United States. Every 2 weeks, I had to come clean the stitches in Nigeria, but in the United States, the stitches were left to heal on their own after 2 months. I wasn't lactating, so I wasn't able to breastfeed my girls. The doctors and nurses were more than happy to provide all the assistance I needed to breastfeed, but the breast milk didn't come easily. No matter how much liquid I consumed, nothing seemed to work. Although I was told there was a medicine I could take, but I was also advised not to take it. So there was no solution to that.
Everything proceeded pretty much how they would expect, but very, very slow. So I labored for 31 hours or 32 hours. And towards the end of that, I was finally starting to show some progress. But every time I would have a contraction, her heart rate would drop. And so that was indicating to them that she would not tolerate natural labor or a vaginal birth. I was concerned that having given birth by C-section meant that my milk wouldn't come in. But after she was born at about 2 a.m, and they helped me latch, and she breastfed for, I swear it must have been 8 or 9 hours straight.
If you've had an episiotomy and you can't sit down very well, then nursing sitting up probably not going to be a great position for you to try. So your helpers need to be aware of, do you have a cesarean scar that we need to be aware of? Or do you have an episiotomy? Or, what's going on? How can we help you to be comfortable? Because you are going to be spending a lot of time breastfeeding your baby. So we want you to be comfortable.
It was really, and my partner went out of town 5 days a week, almost immediately after the birth, after a couple of days, because they were working out of town, and you're alone and you're afraid to take a shower because, this thing could die while I'm in the shower, right? You think you're the only one. Like, you think that you're the one who can't do this. And then you realize you're not alone. This isn't instinctual. And people who tell you that, well, I'm glad that it was easy for you, but it's not. For a lot of parents, it's a hard thing to do.
And certainly these experiences has impacted on my decision to have more children. I have 2 girls, and I think that's enough.
It was just really difficult. And so when I think about having a baby again in the future, it is an instant sense of worry of, will I be able to give birth in the way that I want to? Will I have sufficient and safe access to healthcare? It does add a huge weight of anxiety to the idea of having a baby again in the future, of, bringing up all that stress and sadness again.
Some people have a terrible time with baby number 1, and so they might decide, I can't put myself through that again. It was, it affected my mental health when I wasn't able to breastfeed, or when I had so many challenges. So I'm not going to go through that again. Or when baby number 2 comes along, they might decide, I'm really going to educate myself beforehand, and I'm going to get my supporters lined up so that things will go better the second time. I think that's probably the most common scenario. In Ottawa, we're very fortunate. Loretto League offers a helpline, and you call and leave a message 7 days a week, holidays included, and you can leave a message anytime. It's not going to wake anybody up, and you will have a return call within 24 hours between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And so the leaders take turns answering those calls. And we also, in Loretto League, offer virtual meetings as well as in-person meetings where people can come together and support one another. So breastfeeding is, peer support is considered to be one of the key factors in breastfeeding, meaning helping you meet your breastfeeding goals. So that's where Loretto League comes in. It's really hard to speak up for ourselves if we've just had a baby or if we're in our late stages of pregnancy. So that's where partners or family members come in. You want to look for a helper who is experienced and is trained in breastfeeding challenges, who knows how to recognize challenges, and who knows how to help you.